Welcome to Uplink, where we explore the world of digital infrastructure, uncovering the technology fueling AI and cloud innovation with the leaders making it happen. Megaport has this sort of unique lens where we're in 26 countries around the world, and we're seeing all these different trends in different countries. We've spoken to Brazil, the US, we look at Europe, we've seen some interesting things in France. So all these different pieces that are playing out. It's possibly the hottest space in the world right now, particularly data centers, as a flow-on to what we're seeing with AI and this exploding space, how hyperscalers are sort of playing out. In the US, they're seeing this just insatiable amount of capital that's been raised, and they're deploying all these new data centers. I think everyone has landed. Everyone's now in the data center game, it would seem, which I find entertaining. How is that playing out for the Australia region? And I know you guys have just raised a whole bunch of capital to go and do some interesting stuff. So I'd love to get your perspective on how that's playing out for Australia. And I know you got some views, particularly on the sovereign elements of that, which I think will play out for all locations around the world.
Correct, yes.
So,
it's not a uniquely Australian thing.
Yes.
It clearly impacts Australia. And you know, frankly, thanks for having me here. And one of the things I do appreciate is I see Megaport as a great Aussie success story too. So
yes,
yeah, I'm very happy to
be Aussies out there dominating the world.
That's it. Yeah. Way to go. So how's it impacting us? So I think there's absolutely a lot of interest from a technology and a capital flow perspective.
Yes.
Certainly, if you're in the data center game, everyone wants to talk to you.
Everyone's got capital for you to deploy.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a long queue of people. You know, when people are calling you, and I say you to meet our business, calling you to give you money, it's always
it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, it is.
I know you've been in the game a while, so it's like it's a different lens, I suppose, or a different landscape right now.
Yeah, it is. You know, I often joke about the fact that probably in 2019, if you told someone that you were a virologist, no one cared and didn't want to talk to you, and then the pandemic happened, and suddenly everyone wanted to have the local virologist to talk about COVID-19, and it's a bit like that with data centers, right? 5 years ago, you say you're in data centers and people roll their eyes now. Oh, really? I don't want to talk.
You're the cool kid on the block.
Do you want to come over Saturday?
Come and talk to our people.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Get on a podcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so what's happening? So I think there's definitely a land grab, and there's a FOMO for a lot of capital and a lot of businesses that see an AI explosion occurring or on the horizon. And clearly there are people that debate about whether or not it's overhyped or not. And so they're trying to make sure that they don't miss out on whatever AI brings to the economy. I often, when I think about AI, I think that the speed at which it will impact our lives, I think sometimes is overestimated in the sense that don't think it's going to quite happen as quickly as people think.
Yeah.
But the impact will be way more profound than people think.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's electricity. So when electricity was first brought to market as a product, people didn't buy electricity for their homes. They bought lighting because they thought that's the only thing electricity did.
Do. Yeah.
Right? So AI, it's a bit like that. I don't think we've realised all the things that AI can do.
Yeah. We think of AI right now in the lighting sense.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. ChatGPT. Well,
yeah.
No, that's really, you know, a very interesting element of AI, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near all of what AI can deliver. Yes. Interestingly, look, so we're entering the age of agent AI. You know, where we'll have agents that work for organisations to do tasks on behalf of that business. But we'll soon enter the age of physical AI. You know, clearly Elon Musk demonstrated his robots at the last launch a few months ago now, and he's building a whole factory, the old Electrolux factory. They've got 100,000 GPUs, and they're going to 200,000 GPUs.
Yeah.
And that's meant to be just to train the robots.
It's amazing.
He said, I'm sure you recall, he said that, they believe they'll make more money out of robots than they will out of cars.
More than likely. I mean,
Yeah, so
we'll have one.
Yeah.
In theory, you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wash your clothes, cook you breakfast, etc., etc. Yeah.
So in a data center sense, to bring it back to the topic, I guess that I think that data centers, people want to make sure they capture that. What's happening in the data center world is we're going to change the hierarchy and structure of data centers to some degree. I think there'll be more purpose-driven data centers, and I'll explain.
As opposed to sort of a generic.
Yeah, like I've got a data center, and how big is it? No. So I've got a data center, and there might be a data center that's a training ground.
Yes.
So the interesting thing, for example, in a training data center, like a genuine training data center, 100% availability might not be that important.
Yes. Yep.
Right? But once the training starts,
you need it to be up during
That's
that
right.
time.
That's
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So you need 100% reliability when it's running.
Yes.
That's
yes.
right. And
that changes what? That changes like
SLAs, how you build.
Yes. Yeah.
You those places might have multiple halls where you stay. You might not have all of the power going all of the time. So you might have a finite amount of power, and you've got one hall that you fire up and have going,
spin up for a period,
and then while they're staging that, because in a training sense, an AI cluster isn't all GPUs. There's got to be some storage, there's got to be some network.
Yes,
and there's a period during the way AI tasks run is that the CPUs and the network and storage are working heavy, but they don't consume anywhere near the amount of power as the GPUs, and they're kind of getting the thing ready to go.
Staging it, so
And so you could have a hall that's focused on that at the moment, and the one next door is doing hardcore training, really churning through the electricity, and then you bring that side down and bring the other up. So that could be a thing.
Yeah. Does that? Can I ask you on that one? Does it impact the grid? Like if you spin these things up, have you got enough power that you can deploy? Like I assume when you turn the thing on, it just starts to draw. Do you have to, I don't know, how do you manage that?
So that is a problem. So firstly, if we talk about how when the systems kick in, they go from naught, effectively drawing very little power to drawing 100% of power in milliseconds sometimes.
Yes,
So certainly the
I don't even understand how the grid handles it.
So because of the way data centers are operated, and you have both generators and some type of UPS
the battery
feeding into the electrical bus bar, really they're the ones that get hit the hardest.
Yes.
Right. So they're the ones that really get punched. So having that match fit electrical and cooling infrastructure is absolutely part of AI design in data centers now. So talking about how we've got to think about data centers now, we've got to think about different ways of building and designing data centers to cope with AI. And it's not just the hard hit of when they fire up. It's also that clearly they run very hot, and so now you need ways to cool them.
Yes.
And at the moment, the clubhouse leader, we believe, will be some type of liquid-to-liquid cooling, and
that's running to the chip. Is that submerged? Is it what's the mixture, like a radiator?
So the way it works is that generally the data center operator provides chilled water, which it currently uses to blow air through to cool the room.
Yeah.
So the chilled water's still already in the data center.
Yeah.
But it then runs into chill distribution units, so CDUs, and so they have effectively a radiator with cold water running through it, and then that's attached to another radiator with another form of liquid. Generally not water. It's another
oil or something.
There's a few different specs of the liquid, but it's either water with other things added or other elements. There's mineral oils, there's water additives, there's a few different proprietary ways like that. And then that secondary loop then goes through and runs through a manifold in a rack across a very well calibrated block of metal with very specific paths that the liquid travels through.
Yeah, it's like a heat distribution.
To extract the heat from the chip.
Yeah.
And depending on the manufacturer,
retrofit this into your data centers, or it's only some, or how does that play out?
Yeah, so you certainly can put it into a lot of data centers, but if you've got an older data center, it may make it very inefficient in the way you consume and retrofit a data center. Your best bet is actually to have one that's built from the get-go.
Yes.
Because, so I've talked about the liquid cooling infrastructure. You still need to cool the air. And so in the next few generations, at least, of this AI infrastructure, we are looking at, a blend of air and liquid cooling, which may change on
depending upon what it's used for.
Correct, right. So you've got the CPUs ramped down because you're staging GPUs ramped down because you're staging something, and you might not need as much liquid cooling at the moment. So it really is flexibility in the design. So again, the impact on the AI industry is that we need to build data centers that are more flexible between air cooling and liquid cooling, and you need to be able to do both. So that's going to be a massive impact. So you've got different cooling technologies. You've got different skills in a data center. There's now a lot more liquid in a data center. Plumbers are going to rule. Plumbers are going to rule. So whoever thought of bringing on plumbers into the data center? But they are clearly we've had water a lot, but it was much more static in the way that was routed. But now
before it was electricians, now it's plumbers.
Yes, right, that's right, yeah.
Or a bit of both.
Yeah, you absolutely still need electricians. Yeah. So it's going to be it'd be great to see, a university or there are some organisations that train on the engineering aspects of data centres, but I don't know of a specific degree or a university that's really starting it, and it's going to be so fundamental to our life, how that data centers
was not going away. That's the thing. So it's like this explosion right now, but it's kind of funny because it's like, I guess you've always been in this space. You knew how critical data centers were for the entire world. It's now become just so publicly critical. It's exploded really quickly, but it's not like something that's going to just ramp up and then disappear. You said it before, the training is never going to stop. Then there's the inferencing, and then there's just, like you said, we've kind of figured out, like ChatGPT is like the equivalent of screwing a light bulb in. Now we have light. That's great.
Yeah.
But now what? Like what will
it allow us to see?
Yeah, exactly. What can we see? And then what can we got to air condition it and all the rest of it?
Yeah.
So how does that play out for you guys? So I'd love to give the Australian lens to that.
Sure.
So we see global, all these trends. What does that mean for Australia? Like, why would we even play in this space? We've got expensive power. Why would there be a need to be there? I suppose.
Sure. So there's a couple of. I'll deal with that a couple of ways. So firstly, I think, with all due respect to the Americans, I think they're a bit ahead of the world, frankly, in AI.
They're going pretty hard. The big hyperscalers are going really fast on it,
and they've got scale and things, and so they are a couple of years ahead of the Australian context. But I definitely see people starting to plan and get ready for AI. We're certainly talking in the market about some big AI projects about to kick off that really aren't public yet. I think we will see
the importance of being sovereign. I think is
absolutely
what plays out for us, as opposed to just taking everything from the US.
Absolutely,
yeah.
So I think we'll see some larger data centers for bulk training. They're typically going to be less latency sensitive. So the interesting thing I think about those very large training grounds is the intra data center latency. So the latency inside the data center is critical because you want the GPU chips to think they're operating like one unit. And in order to do that, you need to have super low latency.
Yeah.
So that's why they're so hot and dense, because if you spread them out to spread the cooling across a larger area, the physical distance from the one chip to the other would mean that it wouldn't operate correctly.
Yeah.
That's why they become dense and small. So we're going to see those sites, I think, in less latency sensitive areas. So they'll go out to the west or in places where it's easier to build a bigger site.
Yeah.
Then you'll have another tiering down of sites that are going to be doing a combination of continual training. So people need to understand that you build a model, but once you've built a model, generally, if it's acting as an agent for your business or doing something, you want to continually train it.
Yeah,
right? It's not just a model and it's static.
Last year's data is not this year's.
So it might not be trained at the same rate. So you're not creating tokens, at the rate that you do when you're building the initial model, but you're still creating tokens all the way through this process. So you're continually training the model, and that model is then being used for inferencing or generative AI. Or averaging, some people call it. So that model, they're still going to be significantly sized, and they're likely to be medium-sized data centers, the 100 meg. I mean, 10 years ago, 100 meg, people go, oh my God, that's huge. But now 100 meg is medium.
Yes.
Medium to large-sized data center. And so you'll see clusters of these medium-sized, 150, 100 meg data centers being built in capital cities. And yes, it's a phenomenon for Australia, but I think it's a phenomenon for the world, to be clear. And the models that they create and the agents that are in those models that are helping businesses be successful are going to be fundamental to that business. You think of it like an accounting firm with a couple of hundred people that might have bought off the shelf overseas an accounting model. Then they bring that model and they have it dedicated to their business, and they start to train it with
the local laws, with the local tax rules.
In fact, you work there, I don't, and Fred's a customer and Mary's not, and so it needs to learn about that, and it becomes more and more ingrained in that company. And the amount of effort you make in training that model, even a moderate-sized company will spend millions in training the model over time. Now it's augmenting 20 or 30 roles, so it will be a pay efficiency drive. It will more than pay for itself, but it will become possibly the most valuable asset of that business. So it needs to be protected, and we need to make sure
updated constantly.
Updated constantly. And to your point earlier, as these decisions start making business critical decisions, life and death decisions, medical decisions, they need to reside in the host country, because that host country, you need to have laws and jurisdictions from that host country. And that's why we're seeing, both a combination of the hyperscalers also building in country in a lot of places. Because it's really important. Then they understand that it's going to be important to have locally, not just from a latency perspective, but for this jurisdictional reasons. And we're also seeing the advent of, I think, companies will start to own some of their own AI infrastructure as well. We'll see small pods, and so companies will also have a little bit of their own AI infrastructure, use some AI resources out of the cloud, and of course the general cloud resources continue to grow. So we've got all of these pressures driving the data center business.
The perfect storm.
And then of course there will be some a real rise in the edge data center. So the ones right next to the customer. I guess the classic example of that is a self-driving car that doesn't do that much learning. Quick decisions right on the spot. And there's a combination of couple of meg-sized kind of data centers really close to the customers. So I think we'll see the tiering of data centers. They'll have purpose-built data centers. You'll see the growth of AI and the continual growth of cloud.
And this sovereign factor. And I mean, you guys are, I don't know how large, but one of the largest suppliers to government, I think, in the region. So you'll see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a big part of our business supplies to government. In fact, 42% of federal government agencies use us to provide, clean their internet and do some other security things as well. So, every business needs to have a thing that they stand by, and our thing is about being sovereign and compliant and secure. So we are proud of being very Australian, like Megaport, and so that's a factor. And sovereignty really, honestly, will be such a big thing around the world. It's also that to some degree about ownership of the assets. If you think, we're clearly in a time of heightened geopolitical tension, and
putting all your eggs in another country's basket.
That's right. Well, so if you've
how
got
do you pick that, and then how do you get out of it if they ever needed to? Like, it's tricky.
Yeah, and it might not be a friend, might be a friendly country, but they have, if we've got some existential problem like another COVID or something like that, they may just need the resources for their own country, right? They're not going to be rude about it. I just, it's a choice of the resources go to you or to go to me, and I've got the problem that you have. I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
So so there needs to be a little bit of self-reliance, defense, all of those things.
Yeah.
So definitely a big push to have those AI resources controlled and in a sovereign location. And I think there is a third factor, and that is that governments, I often joke about governments, a bit like justice, grind slowly, but they grind thoroughly.
Yeah.
And I think they'll eventually catch on to how transformative AI will be. And we've talked about the kind of negative aspects, but also think of the productivity gains and how it will drive a country's economy. And so as soon as you see something that's so fundamental to the economy and the people of a country, government will regulate it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a tsunami of laws coming your way, regulation, compliance. And so, we also see people, a bit like my comment about the hyperscalers, making sure they're putting assets in those countries because they know that those regulations will eventually arrive. And so, we say you might as well plan early for that and go, well, it's probably going to be regulated. I need to have it here. So let's start with, how do I get it to be in my country, in my backyard kind of thing. So there's definitely
a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And it's exciting. I can't wait to have my own Tesla robot or whatever brand it is.
Yeah. Maybe a couple of them.
Yeah, that's right.
One upstairs, one downstairs.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if it genuinely is $30,000 US, let's see about that. Which is, unfortunately with the Southwest Pacific peso that we have in Australia, that's more like 50,000. But anyway, but if it's a 50,000 one-off purchase to have effectively a servant in there, I mean, I think I can be derogatory about it because it's quite a lot. I don't know if so 50,000. I think there'd be a lot of homes with it. Someone to go and make you wash your car and walk your dog. And
how many can you have?
Look, another thing you're talking about. Another thing that and the light example we talked about before. People often talk about AI assistants or AI agents being like, oh, imagine you had an assistant and they could call a restaurant and make a booking for you, and you go, yeah, okay, that's kind of cute, but that's not how AI would work. The AI agent would call 300 restaurants.
Yeah, fine.
Right, know exactly what your preferences are.
Yes.
Find exactly what you want. And chances are in the future, they will be calling AI agents in those restaurants.
Well, they have to be. If everyone's calling 300 restaurants,
right, exactly,
right. The restaurant's taking
that's right. So the restaurants will have to have their... So it's not... It really is not about doing exactly what we're doing now a little bit better. It's about a next leap forward, in what you can do with AI. I think we discussed earlier too that the move away from clearly large language models, ChatGPT, those type of things are going to continue, but there is a shift in research with AI and AI models to move down to models based on mathematics, which is a more fundamental building block. And I think that will also drive a new wave of quickness of development of AI.
Yeah, it plays into healthcare, plays into how we make decisions on life and death.
There's an article I read recently about how long it took to map a protein, which was important in medicine and treating medical conditions. And this PhD department had 10 people that worked for 15 months to map one protein.
Yeah,
and now they can do it in a day on a GPU.
That's insane. Yeah.
Right? So,
well, that's what I hope we see. Like beyond, it's the light bulb, as you said, but going well and truly beyond that. Like, what improvements for humanity and life should we see out of this, and how quickly can we see that?
But people will get drugs made that treat exactly their condition down to the very
based on your DNA or whatever the hell it is. Yeah.
Well, cancer is another classic, because cancer by its definition is where cells have started to divide irregularly. And so every person's cancer, even if two people have the same cancer, the cancer cells are very specific to that person. And so if you could then map those cancer cells in real time and then create something that just goes and kills just that cell, I mean,
How good's that?
Massive advances in cancer treatment.
One thing I'd love to get your take on is connectivity. And I mean, it's the world we live in, certainly Megaport.
Yeah.
How critical is that to the data centers? And I think it's one thing that gets sort of forgotten. Everyone's like, we've got to get power, we've got to space, we've got to build these incredible things. And then we go, now how do we get customers to connect to them?
Yeah. I mean, I'll shamelessly say that we partner with Megaport, and absolutely the connectivity layer is going to be critical, because if I go back to the example earlier of the 300 restaurants that the AI agent calls, well, it's not going to be picking up the telephone. Yeah. So, it's the connectivity out of these data centers and into data center connectivity that becomes a fundamental enabler it's an enabler of honestly, nothing happens without connectivity in and out of a data center. You need to move stuff into stage models. You need models to talk to other things, and it's not just connectivity, and it's not just local. It'll be a global phenomenon, and I appreciate the Megaport fabric's global, so it can only get more important.
It's like air. We think of it as like air. Oxygen in the air.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it's got to be there to enable everything else.
Well, what we're seeing, and we see this everywhere, is this it's sort of this insatiable demand for speed, but speed at a different, like speed for a period where they're moving things. This sort of flexibility and ability to move up and down, which is sort of kind of what we were originally built upon. So that's sort of playing beautifully into our sweet spot. We'll keep building more and more speed. So, we've gone and rolled out 400 gig backbones, and so that people can just instantly spin up 100 gig wherever we can get them to.
Yeah, of course.
And the other piece is we're seeing so many customers in so many different locations needing to access these different data centers that are coming into into being. So we have had cloud for a while, but we're seeing these sort of, hey, maybe it's an AI data center, or maybe it's an inference space, but they've got to move that data from where they are today. So
I think gone will be the days of a company, frankly, having all of their stuff in a data center.
Yeah, this is the one place for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when they do, concentrate in a couple of data centers, those elements will need to talk to lots of other things on the network, right? And so, it will be the dynamic connections and dynamic bandwidth will really be a thing.
Well, we saw this, it was like one cloud to rule them all. And if that was the case, they'd just build their own data centers, no place for us, and then we'd all land in sort of this AWS, and that was it.
Yeah.
But what we've seen play out is it's getting more fragmented. It's getting more misty. There's more and more clouds. We're seeing more and more on-premise requirements. We're now seeing GPU as a service companies appear. We're seeing all these, it's getting far more complex, shall we say, and it's up to us to simplify that for the customers. But that plays out well for our businesses in terms of what we service back to the customers.
Yep.
New locations, new spaces, different types of companies, and different connectivity required to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we love your partnership. We really appreciate what we're doing together. We're going to keep going big with yourselves.
Yep.
We know we do I know you look after some of the most critical infrastructure inside Australia that service all the Australians, and I know you leverage a lot of Megaport to do that. We can't share what that is, but it's exciting to see what you're doing, and we really enjoy that partnership, and we're here for the long term. So thank you.
And we love the partnership as well. So
yeah, awesome.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
No.
Love that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.